Good afternoon, I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards over on Twitter, and today we are going to talk a little bit about Royal Ascot, and we're going to have a quick flick back through the classics that have already happened, some of the big races, just with a view to going forward, maybe if you want to have an Antepost bet, or just to gather a bigger picture of what might happen going towards Ascot and beyond for things like the Coral Eclipse. Looking back at those, they're generally the best races that we've seen so far. So I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. I am on a timer because I know that I do go too far on certain races. So I'm going to try and keep it to around 2 minutes per classic, but we'll see how we get on. So first up, we're going to talk about the 1,000 Guineas. So the 1,000 Guineas, as far as a straight up renewal, the 1,000 Guineas, I wasn't convinced that it was the strongest renewal on paper. Obviously, Fallen Angel was sent off the short-ish price favourite and obviously underwhelmed. Amalka came through late and obviously it was unexpected due to the fact mainly because she'd only had 2 runs. It's very, very rare for any horse to win 1,000 Guineas off only 2 runs in experience. It did kind of fall apart. Ramatuelle, you would say, looked like the most likely winner. Sent off too soon. Jockey pushed too many buttons. Got caught late home. Porta Fortuna, you would have expected would have been the more likely winner with her experience over the Breeders' Cup. But she got collared by Amalka, who came from the clouds, as they say, coming alongside the near side rail and just stayed on better than the rest and went past. Obviously, Ylang, we expected to have ran a perfect prep for the Oaks, but she has let the form down since. But she was lame, they've got an injury, and she just didn't run a race at Epsom. So you could take that out. So if you took that form out, then arguably the 8th, with obviously Fallen Angel following up since in the Irish 1,000 Guineas, you'd say the form's fairly good. I do think this season, though, nearly not every single, but the majority of horses have all needed a run. And Amalka was one of very few who had a run, and she was not very good on her first run out. It was only her second start, but it was still her first run of the season. She went there with the benefit of having a run. I think many of these will have come on for that run. I'm not saying she can't do it again, because obviously she was inexperienced, so she's going to gain the experience, so she'll improve for her experience. This will only be her 4th run of the career. But I would be surprised looking through. She's going to run in the Coronation Street Stakes on the Friday of Royal Ascot. I'd be surprised if some of these were not a lot closer or finishing in front of her there with that run under their belt. So my view from that is I do think whilst Amalka is to be respected, she wouldn't be top of my list going forwards to back in the Coronation Street Stakes, because she's the same price as Opera Singer and Fallen Angel, and I just think it's probably a bit too short for a horse that was sent off 28 to 1. I'm not saying it was a fluke, but I didn't expect it, and I think others will catch up with her. Moving on across to obviously the boys, the 2,000 Guineas. 2,000 Guineas was won by Notable Speech. Again, City of Troy, the absolute flop. Is that his fault? Probably not, because as O'Brien said straight away after the race, without hesitation, just said, I've not done enough, I've not done this, I've not done that. And it was fairly obvious to him that he knew exactly what he needed to do with the horse. And obviously he's proved that since. Obviously you're not going to take that form literally, that obviously Rosalian and Notable Speech beat him over 16 lengths. But he was a no-show. So then you look at the rest of the race, but it did have good horses in. Hartem has since franked the form, as has Rosalian. They finished 2nd and 3rd here. They both finished 1-2 Irish Guineas. This goes back to my original point. Neither of those 2 horses, in fact, no, that's a lie. Hartem had a run and had won previously. But Rosalian, obviously, you can mark up for the fact he hadn't had a run. Notable Speech had 2 runs at Kempton. But obviously it was a huge jump up for him. Al Yanabi, not too sure on Al Yanabi. I was fairly confident he'd go well in this race, but wasn't the best. But again, first run out. Inisherin has since franked the form when obviously beating the Commonwealth Cup favourite at the time, Van Dijk. But again, Van Dijk hadn't had a run, so Inisherin had the benefit of having a run, but at least it franks the form. The form in behind is looking good, it's looking solid. The 2nd and 3rd went on to win the 1st and 2nd in the Irish Guineas, beating River Tiber, so the form is solid. Notable Speech ran a 1-2-3 here, same RPR as what Caribus ran here prior to then going on, and then he won the St James's Palace Stakes on the Tuesday of Royal Ascot. That was only his 4th run, first run on grass. And he tanked through the race. He came up that far side, and to be honest, all eyes were drawn to Rosalian. You looked at it, it was a push button job, but then on the far side, Notable Speech had another push button. The only thing you could say was that due to the fact that he had race fitness, or is that due to the fact that he's just a better horse than him? He has a better turn of foot. Both of them are going to favour this return to a bend around in the St James's Palace Stakes, in my opinion. They're both push button horses, which I mean is that they've both got the acceleration. Hartum is skipping this and going to the Jersey Stakes, so it is going to be an interesting one too. Hannam will not want any rain, and there is some rain forecast. How hard it hits, I do not know. But for me, notable speech, obviously, Caribas ran the same number and then he went on and franked the form. He ran a lower number, I think it was £5 lower, something like a 117 when winning the St James's Palace Stakes. But he got the job done. It was a scramble of a race. He got a rough draw and he got the job done. I think if Notable Speech gets a fair draw, whilst obviously it was only his first start on grass, he did have race experience because he'd raced 3 times already, all 3 at Kempton. I do think he could be an improver, but it's tough. I think price will dictate where you go. And don't forget Henry Longfellow still to come. But the bottom line is, I think the English 2000 Guineas, that form is already solid. Ghost Writer obviously didn't run his best race in France, but it was a messy race like many are. So then we move across and we go to the Irish 1000 Guineas. So the Irish 1000 Guineas was won by Fallen Angel. She obviously bounced back, hence having had a run. She had a run and she took on a few horses that hadn't had a run. She looked fairly obvious on paper, but the money didn't really come until late on. She went from 6s all the way into 11 to 4 within the last 24 hours of the betting. Take a look in behind. Purple Lily had looked impressive without looking like as in standout, as in she looked like a strong horse going into this. Buttons is one that always looks like she's flattering to deceive. She seems to come hard and late when everyone else is staying on, but she just doesn't quite get there. 2 horses that, in my opinion, to take out of the race. I thought Elilat Roller was very good. I thought she gave the favourite. Well, I don't think anything gave the favourite run for money because she won very convincingly. But she was impressive considering she wasn't even the first string of the yard. And they also didn't want any rain for her. So I think with better ground, she might improve again. I'm not sure where she's going to go. The one I took out of the race was Opera Singer. I was so impressed with her last year when she won the Marcel Boussac. And I'm so convinced that if she'd gone to America in the Breeders' Cup and ran on that fast turf, being a Justify, she'd have absolutely bolted up out there. The race that Content finished, I think it was a staying on 3rd or 4th. And I think she's still the best of these. Basically, it was at the point where Aidan O'Brien was saying that, well, I say not himself, but the rumours were going around that basically she needed to run if she was going to have any hope of making Royal Ascot, but she was nowhere near ready for the day. So the fact that they had the rain and she still ran as well as she did, it was remarkable, really. And she was still in there turning in. Eventually she was beaten 4 lengths plus, but that's the same with any Ryan Moore ridden horse. Once the chance is gone, he's not going to bottom that horse there and then. I'd expect her to come on leaps and bounds. She'll need to, because obviously she needs to improve on ratings. She's higher rated than Fallen Angel, but on RPRs she needs to get at least £10 back on that 4 lengths. Again, I could see it, and obviously that is a horse I put up and I have backed at 4-1 for the Coronation Stakes. I still think Fallen Angel's the one to beat. They haven't said that she'll definitely go to the Coronation, but it is looking more and more likely in a race that looks absolutely littered. It's pure Ramatuelle Amalka, so the 1-3 from the 1000 Guineas, and then the 1-3 from the Irish 1000 Guineas look like they're all going to meet in the Coronation Stakes. So whilst Opera Singer is my one so far, I'll be surprised if I'm not having a second bet, but we'll see. If the ground comes up fast, then it'll be Opera Singer all the way for me riding solo. So all in all, the form's starting to stack up. We're starting to get some good form. Most important thing, as I've mentioned again and again, horses need a run. I've got no interest in the horse going to a race at the moment that hasn't had a run. And then obviously over to the Irish 2000 Guineas, and we had Rosalia and franking the form with Hartum. I mean, this looked fairly obvious going into it. I did put up the forecast, but it always looks obvious till it's not, and then Aidan O'Brien gets a 1-2-3. This looks like a really weak renewal. Unquestionable, obviously, won over at the Breeders' Cup when River Tiber was pulled out, but there's never been any sort of comparison that River Tiber's not the better horse, and we saw that here. The big thing for both these, neither of them had a run. If you ran this race again with both of them having a run, would they win? I don't know, but I could guarantee you it'll be a lot more of a race. A run is so important this season. Rosalian didn't do anything better than what he'd already shown. He ran to the same level, 119 RPR. He beat Hartum, who he'd obviously finished 2nd and 3rd in the Guineas. So he hasn't improved anything. But what he did do is he showed versatility, because whilst Sean Levy got some good plaudits for it, I thought he left himself with plenty to do. Obviously, he was fairly well held back, and Hartum was effectively a pacemaker, but he left it late, and the horse didn't find as quick as I think he thought he'd found. But the thing is, every race is different, every track's different. You don't know how much he'd left behind from the Guineas. Like, he'd go to Ascot, and on a push button circuit, he could show that extra race of experience against Notable Speech, and he could come on again. If Charlie Appleby's left Notable Speech 110% for the Guineas, does that mean that he won't have any more to improve? So it's always very difficult to weigh up this time of year. But at the end of the day, I think Rosalian is about at where his level is for now, about the 119, 120 RPR. But that is more than enough. That if he takes to St James's Palace, everything's going to be dictated to by price. So yeah, again, the 2000 Guineas form's looking good. So then we flick across and we go over to Chantilly for the Brixton Jockey Club. So this is where this looked a red hot renewal on paper. Again, the Guineas form is franked with Ghostwriter finishing an unlucky fourth. Well, I say unlucky, but obviously Someway was unlucky as well. But there was a few placeholders in behind, but take nothing away. It was all about Look to Vega. So Look to Vega absolutely bolted up. Looked very impressive. 10 furlongs, only third start, heavy ground. So on pedigree, heavy ground is going to be important to Look to Vega. But with the Arc as the long-term aim, you're more than likely to going to get at least soft in the title. It's very rare that we get a fast run, a fast ground Arc. Ace Impact won the same race, the Brixton Jockey Club, running into a 125 RPR, then ran below that and then back up and won obviously the Arc de Triomphe. It would be no surprise if First Look's connections target a very similar sort of pattern, same sort of path, try and keep it simple. And I'd say right now, like obviously I've seen City of Troy's up there with him, I'd say Look to Vega is definitely the one to beat for me in the Arc so far. If you've got them free bets, you want to bang them in with Euros horses, Royal Ascot horses, etc., throw Look to Vega on the end. Like, you know the horse is going there. There's just one of the best trials that last year's Arc winner won. Got zero faults with it. In behind Diego Velasquez, his chance was over as soon as the draw was made. And again, he ran such a screamer the time before. How much did that leave behind? But again, Ryan Moore, the draw, brought him across. If he'd fitted in nicely and it was like, okay, this is on, he would have gone for it. He didn't, and it was like, okay, it is what it is. Right then, so back over to England, a bit more recent now. So we go to the English Oaks and we're looking at Azealia. So Azealia was impressive on this day. I mean, looking back, you kind of thought there's only a few horses that could beat Ylang Ylang. She was one of them, but I wasn't convinced when I was looking at the race that she was 7-2 and 4-1. She drifted as big as 8-1 on the day, but Dermot Weld has just not been on form. So, I mean, it's not difficult to see why she did. With regards to Ralph Beckett horses, this isn't anything towards the trainer. It's just, I heard a lot of comments going into it. They had 4 at the time going into the race. They ended up, 8. They ended up, one of the jockeys commented prior, Hector Crouch, commented saying, at the start of the season, we thought we could have as many 8 Oaks horses like these types. Like, they went in with 4. And in my opinion, it's normally a case of, if you can't see which one your best is, then maybe you don't have one. Obviously that's easy to say again post race of hindsight, because some of them were sent off fairly short price. I do think they'll have the chances. I just think they're going to bump into some Group 1 horses, and that's the difference. War Chimes ran an absolute belter for David Menuisier. That's a horse that he likes to run his horses until they get fit, so it was having his 3rd run of the season, but she ran a screamer, so it'd be interesting to see how she's priced up and whether they go for a big one next, but she travelled very well. Dance Sequence, this was much more like what many expected, so she obviously clearly improved for the step up in trip. She kept up the whole Dubai, not winning but going very well in these big races, but she definitely enjoyed the further trip. And the winner, Azealia, she was impressive on the day. I'm not obviously I'm from the Tanawa band camp, I absolutely loved her, and when she was going for the Arc and all the works, and Weld will go for that lightly race campaign. Like, she's priced up for the Irish Oaks, which is the end of July. I'd be surprised if she's back that soon. I think she'll go for a French prep, something like the Vermeil, which will be a walk in the park, and then she'll probably go to the Arc, and then depending on how it goes, maybe go to Breeders' Cup or something. I'm not convinced on her that she's Arc level right now. I think it's too easy to get too involved with a lot of horses in the Arc, and suddenly you've got a book of about 7 horses, and then come the day you only really want to be on one. So I thought she was highly impressive. Dermot Weld is brilliant at bringing these horses along slower. I don't think Chris Hayes could believe his luck about how easy she won. But at the same time, I still think this racing behind probably the front 2, I don't think it's that great. Like I said, when I was doing the preview for Ylang Ylang, I said if this was run at Chester and the title was trial, that she'd probably have been 4 to 5, 4 to 6. She was 9 to 4 at the time. She obviously got sent off 11 to 8. So part of that probably rang true. But I don't think this race looks, when I go through all these other races that I've mentioned, I don't think this looks particularly strong. Outside of the front three, I'm not sure what's beaten, especially with Ylang Ylang obviously picking up an injury. However, we go across to the boy, Troy the boy. He bounced back in with a vengeance. I mean, this was a proper like Twitter feud. People were getting way too excited. You can only be with one horse if you're back at City of Troy. It's City of the Troy or nothing else. You've got to be 100% convinced that he'll do it or you won't. Like, you can't do it. Like, honestly, it's another horse race. Play your own game. You want to back City of Troy, back City of Troy. His biggest price was 4 to 1 with William Hill, post Dex when he got drawn 1. Obviously, there was a lot of people, myself included, on big prices Antepost. You don't really need to be as assertive. I went to the 2000 Guineas. I drove 6 hours going there and back, and I watched him have a 3 furlong workout. I knew within 3 furlongs you could see the body language. It was just, Ryan was like, well, this isn't right. Everyone looking across to him to just say, are you going to push? And he was like, I'm trying. It was like, yeah, game over. And it was disappointing. Like, everyone's applauded to this, and I think even Aidan O'Brien's played it down because it was his, I'm not saying, well, it's his teams, the way they've laid the horse out. They did not have him ready for the 2000 Guineas. And the fact that he could categorically say straight after the race, he was like, you'll see a completely different horse next time. He'd left him short. Instead of obviously getting him in the pre-season, getting the sprints in like you do with your pre-season in football, he'd left him in Ibiza praising him. And honestly, the praise, like walking around the paddock, I've never seen a horse in the pre-parade ring 2 races before. In the pre-parade ring, he was still on his own. He was just doing laps as if he was like a god, like in the sunshine with his groom, round and round. I've never had that much footage. He was quiet as a lamb. He's got the best temperament in the world, but he just wasn't ready for the day. He ponied down to the start. He was so chilled, and this was just complete chalk and cheese. This was impressive. I mean, he's had his first run, again, going back to the first run situation. I don't compare him to August Rodin, and I didn't beforehand. And as I said, they're nothing alike. It was just the fact he was left short, and now he was ready to go. Again, the Derby, you would question how strong it is on paper. There's a few horses that didn't run their race. Ancient Wisdom, I wasn't really a fan of. I thought he was quite laboured, and I think his best chance to win anything this year is probably over further, maybe something like the St. Ledger. But again, I just thought he was quite paceless. He needs soft ground. He didn't get that in the end, so you'd ask questions. Dancing Gemini ran an absolute screamer, but just like most people thought going into the race, perhaps he's a 10 furlong horse. A drop back to something like the Coral Eclipse would suit him. Both the two Balding horses, both the two, I can't remember what their names are, basically the white colours, so Sayadati and Dea Ramel, both ran really well, just a bit like the last few years. You always get some big prices running into a race. But the bottom line with this is there was 3 horses on paper. Well, actually there's 4 because of Ancient Wisdom. But there was 3 of the stronger market rivals, and they all came to the fore. Los Angeles, very, very lucky to have even had his race. He got so worked up in the prelims. He was sweating. He was all over the shop. And luckily, fortunately for him, they gave him another chance. They got him in. And he ran an absolute belter considering all those things. He's run to a really high level, and he's going to be the one to beat in the Irish Derby. But he just needs to sort himself out. Imagine if he puts everything in. It brings me on, like, there's plenty of horses I like for the St. Ledger. Illinois would be one of them, along with Los Angeles. But I think if Los Angeles is to win the Irish Derby, then he starts taking himself away from races like the St. Ledger. But if he doesn't, then he's probably got more class than a horse like, say, Illinois. So, yeah, just weighing it up. Ambient Friendly, I thought, was so much better than I expected. Was very, very impressive. For me, that was like winning without winning. And again, Rob Havlin, I know I said going into the race, I said, oh yeah, I can't have Rob Havlin, I can't have the horse anymore because Rob Havlin switched him. It was complete opposite. I thought he'd give a brilliant ride. He came down there and he was absolutely tanking on the bridle. Went past Los Angeles like he's standing still, and he was just like, I don't even know when to push a button. And it didn't matter what he did. City of Troy snuck between his two, obviously his pacemaker and Los Angeles, his own 2 horses. I mean, don't get me wrong as well. I've mentioned this a few weeks ago for 2000 Guineas, why Coolmore had stopped putting pacemakers in. They put pacemakers in here, and my word, that was a much better everyone obviously fanned out. They put the perfect lines. City of Troy went straight through. The commentator didn't even pick it up, and he was all about ambient friendly. And then he turned to the inside and he realised City of Troy had come off the bridle straight through the gap, and he was gone. And so staying on ambient friendly, he is going to be a force to reckon with wherever he goes. Whether it's over 12 furlongs or 10 furlongs, he's going to be a strong horse to beat. Rab Havlin will keep the ride, and wherever he goes, especially if he gets this faster ground, he is going to be the one to beat. Going back to City of Troy though, I mean, that was so impressive. He had the wrong stall. Ryan Moore still didn't care. I think if he'd had a normal stall and he got the run of the race, he would have bolted up here. I mean, he did bolt up, but even further, and he was just unlucky that he didn't win by further and further. This horse is going to take some stopping wherever he goes. I said this at the start of the season, last season. He's proven it over 12 furlongs. The reason why the Coral Eclipse made sense, has been so much debate over whether he should go to Coral Eclipse or not. Obviously, this horse is going to, this is at the moment, this is their Galileo. They are trying to showboat this horse, and that's why they're looking at options like the Dirt, obviously the Travers and the Breeders' Cup Classic. If they can go across, and if they can take the Coral Eclipse, they'll get a 10 furlong Grade 1 open company on their resume. It won't say that it could be a 4-runner affair and he was getting £10 from his elders. It will just say 10 furlongs Group 1. That means he's got obviously all his Group 1s from being as a 2-year-old over 7 furlongs. He's got the dual Group 1s. He's then got a 1.5 miles. And then he's come back and he's had the 10 furlongs. It then allows them to that's another tick in the CV. And then I know there's a lot of talk of the Travers, and that may well be the case. They could go there and have a try at the Dirt, then come back and have another race back here, and then go to the Breeders' Cup Classic. I've backed him for the Breeders' Cup Classic because I think it'll be the roll of the dice. I'm not sure he's going to go to the Arc, like bottomless ground, all of that sort of thing. I think they're just going to tick all the CV boxes along the way, providing they can get the wins. So moving forward, obviously that's City of Troy. Onto the Coral Eclipse. The reason I put up a bit of information yesterday saying that I thought even money was probably fair, was I know a lot of people are on a lot bigger prices, so I'm not sitting here to tell you even money. I can only see this being a one-way ticket to get shorter. That's why I mentioned it yesterday rather than waiting until this video now, which is Monday at 12 o'clock. He's still 10 to 11 in places. I think that's going to be fair because the reason is City of Troy gets £10 from all the other horses in the race. He's currently rated, I think, 124. And he's going to, so the horses that he'd be up against would be the likes of Passenger, White Birch, August Rodin, Luxembourg. A lot of these horses, they're not even rated the same level, or if they are, say he's running to a 125 RPR. Like off the top of my head, I'd imagine that's probably what White Birch ran to last time. Maybe I'd go 123. Let me just have a check. 125. So White Birch ran to the same level as what City of Troy ran to in the Derby last time, 125 RPR. City of Troy is going to get £10 from White Birch. So that means White Birch either needs to improve £10 or City of Troy needs to be £10 below. He'd need to run to 115 for White Birch's career best. That's obviously just in a complete example, but I'm just trying to get the point across. Nearly all the horses in the field are going to need to run £10 above themselves because he's already running to the same level as what the 4 and 5-year-olds are running to. So this is why I think, one, obviously his price is actually probably fair. The other is when you flick through the race, economics obviously would be the same. He'd get the weight, £10 elders, but they didn't go to Derby and they'd have to pay $37,500 to supplement in here. So I can't see them doing that. Passengers obviously off with the lung infection. Will he bounce back in time? Potentially, but again, he's not even round to a 125, so he'd probably need at least £15 to £20. White Birch and August Rodin, both interesting. August Rodin, Coolmore have been so keen on only sending City of Troy when they're going for a big one. So I'd imagine it'll be him and one of their lessers as a pacemaker. Same would apply to Luxembourg. You could get an Inspiral or an Emily Upjohn. Both need to bounce back. Inspiral's obviously targeted at Royal Ascot currently. Be one or two races. So again, you're guessing and guessing, and then you come down the field. Like this race on papers, the last few years has been won. Last 3 run-ins have been won by 3-year-olds getting the £10. 2 of the 3 were Aidan O'Brien. This race tends to cut up. It comes too close after Ascot, and a lot of horses think the middle distance horses skip it and go to the King George, and the rest think, you know what, I don't really want it. You normally get a short price favourite in it. So whilst even money or 10 to 11 is short, the bet is that he gets there, because I think that it's more likely that depending on what turns up, he could be like 2 to 5 on the day. So obviously I'm completely speculating, and this is just my personal opinion, but that is it. So right then, so we've covered off the review. I have kept it fairly simple. The Coronation Stakes, nice to see Luxembourg get his win. He was gifted the rate. Feed the Fame just seems to have gone off the boil. Emily Upjohn, the race did not suit at all. Fair play to Kieran Schumacher trying something different to try and get involved, but that wasn't really what she wanted. And again, I go back to you need the run. Luxembourg was one of very few to win having need the run. Hamish obviously finished well in second, but he's not a horse that I'd be looking at going forward. So of current bets, I'm not going to go through everything. I'm looking to try and arrange a Royal Ascot preview. There's no guarantee it's going to happen. If it does happen, I've spoken to a few people. It'll be the Cheltenham crowd of Ginger Joe, Racing Lee, and hopefully Racing Gav, the Three Musketeers, and myself. If we can get it sorted, it'll be next weekend and it'll preview the whole week. But it's just trying to get everyone together. So no guarantees yet, but that will be the dream team, hopefully, if it's coming. Quick flick through of the horses that I have backed for next week so far. Obviously, there's a lot of debate with Innsbruck. Is she going to go Queen Anne, Prince of Wales? John Gosden pretty much categorically said she was going to go Queen Anne. Prince of Wales was a backup. And then 2 minutes later, obviously, Passenger's gone. Cheverley Park have White Birch and Passenger. They bred them. So they want them obviously to win. So they don't need Innsbruck to go across. But obviously with Passenger being out, they've only got White Birch now. People suddenly think that White Birch isn't going to run. Like White Birch with Passenger out. In fact, let's stop. Take a pull. Right. Queen Anne. Innsbruck, obviously the one to beat on paper, but that was a pretty deplorable first run that we saw. King Charles Stakes. One horse that I do like is on my radar at the moment is, where is she? Believing. I can't even see her in the betting. She was about 20-1 Believing. She won on the weekend, but when you listen back to what she said, George Bowe said to Nick Luck, basically he was inferring that she hadn't been very good on her last two runs. When she was away in, I think it was it Chartin? She was abroad and she ran deplorably. And on Champions Day she ran okay, but it wasn't great. So he said he had to get a run into her, but he didn't know how she was going to go. She ran, well, she absolutely bolted up. So if she comes on for that run, the drop back to 5 furlongs worked really well, and I think she's of interest. She was around the 20-1, but I can't see her in the market at the moment. She is around the 20-1, and the aim is both races apparently. So she's of interest. I'm not going to go through all the races because obviously there's a lot of good races. Just the ones where I've had a bet. Prince of Wales Stakes, I mentioned White Birch about 3-1. I just think for connections to White Birch, unless the ground is rattling fast like good to firm, which is very rare over here in England right now, I think they'll take their chance because Passenger's out. Well, not 100% out, but pretty much out. So that leaves White Birch against August Road Inn. Well, regardless of if the ground's a little bit quicker, White Birch, I know White Birch had a run. I think connections of White Birch, when they look at getting a Group 1 at Royal Ascot in the Prince of Wales for Cheveley Park, they look through, like the biggest rival is the one that they've just beat. I think it was either 3 or 4 lengths fairly well. So even if the ground's faster and connection of August Road in fancy their chances, I think White Birch fancy their chances. So I mentioned about 3-1. I did take 3-1. Again, we don't know. We haven't heard anything from the trainer or the owners or anyone saying that they're more likely to run or not. There's a lot of talk about Innsbruck switching to this race. John Gosden's come out on Sunday and said, oh yeah, we're not 100% which race the horse is going to. The most likely target is the Tuesday, but could still go the Wednesday. It sounds like they're waiting for the weather, because if White Birch says, if White Birch is going, then there's no reason why Innsbruck won't stay in her 1 mile race, in my opinion. People just it's that time of year where people get a snip of information, change it, word it. How can I contrast this to make a big title? And that's what's happened yesterday. There's big titles saying, Innsbruck Prince of Wales Stakes has become a strong option, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, it hasn't, has it? Because you read through and you look at it and it's not any more a stronger option than it was last week. And for my opinion, to anyone who's, I don't know, obviously I'm not going to say new, advanced, however you are at racing, is if you're thinking, okay, someone said this, whatever, just go to the betting. The fact Innsbruck still sat there at 11-1 for the Prince of Wales, that doesn't tell you that she's suddenly become a very strong chance for this. It spoke volumes last week when you watched the move all the way down the week for City of Troy from 8-1 to 4-1, and then it just got shorter and shorter, and now he's obviously odds on. That's people backing the horse because they know something that you don't. Onto the Ascot Gold Cup, put Kyprios up at 4-1. Still like him. The race has fallen apart. But I do think I would offer reservation. Like, I don't know what price he's going to go off at, and he's currently at 5-6. I wouldn't be in a rush to take that right now. whilst the race, obviously, you don't know who's going to run, and also there's not much competition. I don't think he's shown me anything so far to show me he's back to his 2022 season. His 2 runs so far, both been impressive, won both. But I think that's about the level of when he was beaten against Trawlerman in last year's Champions Day. So I'm hoping Aidan O'Brien is going 80%, 90%, and then you see bang. I mean, the fact that he won first time out is very rare for Aidan O'Brien and this season generically anyway. So whilst I've got no negatives, I also wouldn't be diving in at 8 to 11 or he's 5 to 6 best price. But that race could absolutely fall to bits. Like there's a lot of horses like Desert Heroes going to the Hardwick. Continuous hasn't had a run yet. All the classics will be there. Horses like Coltrane, Gregory. I don't know, will he be there? Vauban, horse I love, but you just don't know what's going on with Vauban. You don't know whether they want to win this sort of race or whether the aim is to show that you're not at this level to try and knock a few pounds off for a Melbourne Cup campaign. So bottom line is Kyprios, if you've backed him, I haven't lost my confidence any sort of way, but at the same time, he's going to have to show more and he's getting shorter and shorter. But if you hear that loads of horses aren't going there, then obviously he's only going to shorten more. So if you know you're definitely going to back him, you're going to have to get on sooner rather than later. Coronation Stakes, right, so this is the race of the week so far on paper. Obviously Buttons is still in there. There's a lot of outsiders. The French like to send runners for this. But at the front end, you've got Ramatuelle, Amalka, Fallen Angel and Opera Singer. This is like bang, bang, bang. You've got the first and third from both the 2,000 and 1,000 guineas. Obviously, if you just read a form book literally, you'd say, well, Amalka beat Fallen Angel, so that's a job done. But that's not the way it works, is it? So they've all had runs now. Ramatuelle looked so good for about 75% of the race. Jockey, in my opinion, hit the buttons too soon. But the fact that straight after they were talking about the Commonwealth Cup, dropping in trip and all this sort of things, it made me think that maybe the mile is not for her. This is round a bend, so this will be more push button rather than the fact of point and shoot. And it'll be more about a turn of foot rather than winding it up. So for me, I still think by a country mile, the 2 horses to beat are Opera Singer and Fallen Angel. Obviously, I've backed Opera Singer, love the horse. I do think she's destined for big things, and I'd be even more confident, especially with her breeding. She was amazing in the Marcel Boussac, and if they get fast ground, she'd be even more so. If the ground is a little bit unsettling, or even if it's good, depending on what the prices are like if I'm having a saver, it's definitely on Fallen Angel. So I'm pretty laid out on that race already. Opera Singer will be the main bet. Albany Stakes is shaping up beautifully. Commonwealth Cup, right? So Inisherin was very impressive when beating Van Dijk. But as I've said, the last half an hour of this, the bottom line is you can't judge horses who haven't had runs against horses who have had runs. Inisherin, very impressive, bolted up, beating Van Dijk. But at the same time, Van Dijk hadn't had a run. Van Dijk was a short price for 3 to 1 favourite, 5 to 2 in places, hadn't had a run. There's nothing to say this whole conspiracy of where people keep saying about horses training on 3 runs. If they haven't trained on by then you judge them. Van Dijk had 1 run, needed it, may have needed it more than we know, we don't know. So I'd be just as keen at the bigger prices of 5 to 1 to take on Inisherin with Van Dijk. River Tiber, very, very interesting if going here, but there's a lot of talk about him going to the Jersey Stakes. Elite Status is the other one that I like. I like Elite Status, sent off I think it was 5 to 4 last year for the Norfolk, finished 3rd. It was one of those horses where every man and his dog was like, you'd expect to hear a preview and someone go, well, I'm going to take him on with a 20 to 1 shot, but it just wasn't the case. Nearly every person was saying Elite Status, Elite Status, Elite Status. And he ran a really good race in the Royal Ascot 2-year-old race, but he was beaten on the day. He was beaten by 150 to 1 winner, if I remember rightly. It might have even been Bucanero Forte. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he was impressive on his return. And I think the thing was, last year with Elite Status is he ran his season in the first 3 months. So he was very good at Sandown. He then went to Ascot. He was very good there, even though he didn't win. Because this is what you forget with these 2-year-olds, is some of these 2-year-olds run brilliant races and they continue to improve through the season. But it's not their fault that they've peaked at a certain stage, and then others, they come on for each run. So you might get an Aidan O'Brien horse that wins the Coventry. It's likely that whilst he might win the Coventry, he may still improve again further throughout the season. So top of my shortlist at the moment is Van Dijk, who's around 5 to 1, Elite Status at 7 to 1. I'm looking at maybe playing those 2 win only, but I'm hoping we'll get some more word on what else is going, because the Commonwealth's been won at some big prices in the past, and you've had plenty of upsets. QE2 Stakes, Wokingham and Hardwick. So the Hardwick I find interesting because you've got Continuous sat at the top there. Continuous is, again, not had a run, and trained by Aidan O'Brien, not had a run. How you like, as in, I don't want to say it, and then suddenly come the day I'm like, oh, I fancy this horse. But I thought this horse was really, really, really strong last year, and I love this horse in the Hardwick. But currently priced 3-1 without having a run is just, that's a no-go. Middle-earth was very impressive when beating Desert Hero, and the horse who beat, I cannot remember, won yesterday. So King of Conquest, I think it was, one for Buick, won well yesterday. So Middle-earth's had his form franked. But before that, Desert Hero was very impressive without winning on his return. So, and then ran a no-show in the Middle-earth race. So Middle-earth's race kind of fell apart and he got up on the line. So I'm not 100% convinced with the front end of this market. I respect Middle-earth and Continuous. And then Rebel's Romance, I'm not sure will go. Emily Upjohn would be interested in running a Hardwick, but that would be a serious drop in class. And then you get to the likes of Tower of London and horses like that. I think a lot's going to depend on who runs from Aidan O'Brien's yard. I still haven't given up on the current price, 14-1 Desert Hero. I haven't given up on that. He was around 3-1, 7-2 after his, I think about 4-1 after his comeback. And that looked a much more realistic price. He should have probably been about 7-1. But he was 20s and now he's 14s. I haven't had a play in the race. I want to know what Aidan O'Brien's going to run because he's got a lot of horses in here. And when you've got a Hardwick, I think a Hardwick's the group 3. When you've got a race like that, Aidan O'Brien could have like, say, 6 Group 1 horses at home and he needs to spread them all out. And he's like, okay, well, that wouldn't win a Prince of Wales, but it'd probably bolt up in the Hardwick. So they'll send it here and they'll pick it up anyway. So I don't want to dive into that. Like Tower of London would be interesting coming back to this trip. So we shall see. So right, I've gone for like a quick overview, catch up of the last month and going forwards to Royal Ascot. So that is where we're at. I'll have a quick look. I don't think, obviously you've got other Antepost races coming up, but I don't think it's anything you want to get too involved with. As I've said time and time again, the flat and jumps are not the same. So if a horse misses a race in prime is obviously unfortunately with Passenger. Passenger won't miss. Passenger can't go to Royal Ascot. Might suddenly go in the Coral Eclipse or the King George. They can run their Group 1 and their race of the season 3 weeks later. So it's a lot harder for you to get as involved as in financially because it's not like Cheltenham where if you miss Cheltenham, like your season's pretty much over. So whereas obviously here they literally just pick up another Group 1. You could again go into August Rodin. He had I think 3 flops last year. He still picked up 4 Group 1s. And that's my point. It's just all about the campaigning and you need to know what they're doing. Now a lot of horses had a run. Now's your time to play. If you've got Ascot fancies, in my opinion, the time, if you like them, to start backing will be from Wednesday because you're going to get entries. So at least you know the intention is for a horse to be running there. The fields will cut up, but they won't cut up drastically. And then the stable tours come out this week. So you're going to get more and more information. And then but the way that some of these races are shaped up, competitiveness, especially things like the sprint and stuff like that, but like the Queen Anne Stakes, like things like that, like Innsbruck obviously finished down the field. Like you've got no idea if she's going to open up 4-1 or she's going to open up 6-4. I think she went off 6-4 last year, but she was beaten. So there's not a lot in a lot of these races. They're going to be competitive. You're going to get prices. You're going to get ground conditions, and it'll only be 48 hours. So there is no real rush. Like you don't need to shoot your load straight away overnight. And last year, remember, it was an absolute bloodbath. One day it was like torrential rain. The next day it was sunny. The punters were all over the shop. No one knew what was going on. So just be patient. So that's it from me. I will be back. If I can get a Royal Ascot preview sorted, I will. And it'll hopefully be next weekend, either Sunday or Monday before basically obviously Royal Ascot starts. Just the guys giving a bit of an overview for the whole week, like their early thoughts on any of the horses running. And obviously the Euro starts on Friday. I know I've been beating the drum again and again and again, but it doesn't get better. You've got the US Open this week, Thursday through to Sunday. Then it goes from Friday, obviously 3-4 weeks of Euros, football every day. And in amongst that, you've got Royal Ascot, Tuesday through to Saturday. Those days, you're going to be waking up and from, I think it's 2 p.m, 5 p.m, 8 p.m, there's going to be 3 group stage games combined with Royal Ascot on from something like 2 o'clock through to about 6:30. And for those that don't have any sort of racing channels, it's all on ITV. It does not get better. Even if you're at work, you're still going to be able to watch it. So hopefully we'll get a bit of sunshine. So positive vibes all round. So if you've got a real strong fancy, whether it's Antepost or whether it's for Royal Ascot or for any race, or if you've got a strong fancy in the football, like outrights, like if you're taking England or anything on, just drop it in the comments and I'll write back. I'll read all the comments. So if not, good luck whoever you're punting, and hopefully I'll be back on the weekend. If not, I'll be back with something for Royal Ascot wise myself anyway. So enjoy your week and speak soon. Bye.